Hi, DJ here with an update on my van living experience in regards to what is by far my most frequently asked question. Why didn't you insulate the van? It's a fair question, and I believe I have some good and simple reasons. So simple, in fact, that a baby could explain them. So that's what's going to happen. Please forgive me. Oh, hi. So you want to know why I didn't insulate the van? Maybe it was because I was lazy. Or maybe just forgetful. Or dumb. Well, I can't say that all three of those answers don't apply to me in some way or another, but I like to think that I had a very good reason not to insulate. I didn't and still don't think it's worth the extra effort, space, and expense. One thing is for sure, if you do choose to insulate, you will lose some of that living space, which of course is at a premium. My van doesn't have a high top, so at 5'8" I have to crouch inside the van, and adding an inch or two of insulation to the roof would have made it too uncomfortable to be acceptable to me. The same goes for insulating the floor. Too much space is lost.
This is crouched enough for me. Another inch. Now you're really doing squats. I guess it's a good workout though. Maybe I should rethink this.
And using a few inches of interior space for insulating the walls would have robbed me of more critical space. In fact, my interior is set up and built with very little or no tolerances in order to fit everything where and in a way I wanted it. Of course, if I didn't want to store my surfboard and or mountain bike where I did, that might not have been as big of a concern. I could also have gone with a smaller bed, but I like being able to spread out in a bigger bed. In other words, your spatial needs and wants will differ, and how much room you allot to options like insulation all depends on your priorities. I personally didn't have any space to waste in that area. Then there is the question of efficiency. Would insulation actually perform well enough to be of use? My thinking was no. One thing to keep in mind is that vans aren't built with the same materials and appliances that a home has. For instance, vans don't have double or triple paned insulated windows, but they do have a bunch of non-insulated windows, which leak heat like sieves. Vans also aren't built with framing that easily accepts insulation, but instead are thin sheets of thermally challenged steel, and it would be very near to impossible to eliminate the holes and a multitude of cold spots in the insulation. Even if you were to do a really tight insulation job, again, you've got a bunch of windows and your precious heat will find its escape through them. Of that you could be sure. Now, I'm not using air conditioning and heating. The van does have a standard heater and air conditioner, although they are driven off the motor, and in the interest of fuel economy, I had no intentions of running the air conditioner while driving, so I wouldn't even think about using it or the heater while parked with the engine idling. Now, for anyone that still isn't convinced that I'm making sense, let me ask you a question or two. Does your house or apartment have insulation? Of course it does, unless you're lucky enough to live in a perfect climate. Then the next question is, why is it insulated? It isn't because insulation creates a perfectly comfortable climate. If it did, you wouldn't be using that thermostat or wood-burning stove or fans, etc., to heat things up in the winter and cool things down in the summer. In a nutshell, the reason why you have insulation in your home is to save on energy costs. All insulation can do is slow down the onslaught of entropy. It won't stop it unless you've got a really serious amount of thermal mass, which of course is practically impossible in a vehicle unless you bury it underground, or want it to weigh twice as much as a fully loaded big rig. So the next question is, and this is a critical one for me, how much will the insulation in a van slow down the heat escape? I don't know the answer to that, but I reckon not much. Sure, maybe you'll get an half an hour, maybe even 2 hours before you need to reheat or recool the interior again. But that's not good enough for me personally. And I'm not spending money on heating and cooling costs, so I don't need to insulate to cut down on those type of expenses. To me, the dilemma is inescapable. When it's cold outside, it's going to get cold inside the van. And when it's hot outside, it's going to get hot inside the van. There really isn't any good way around this without serious amounts of blood, sweat, tears, money, equipment, and a whole different outlook on building and living in your van. Anyway, these are my thoughts on the subject, and I could be wrong. I suppose giving it a try is the only solid way of determining its worth. So if there's anyone out there who has actually insulated a van, I'd love to hear how it worked out. In my next video, I'm going to address my methods for dealing with the heat and cold issues in my non-insulated van. So if you're interested in that, please have a look. Thanks again for watching, and happy trails.